Now I'm very excited to welcome back two of the great handicappers in the sports betting and horse racing world. You know them as Mr. Marco D. Angelo from WagerTalk.com and Mr. Chris Fallica from Fox Sports. Please follow them on Twitter at Marco in Vegas and at Chris Fallica. Guys, thanks for coming back, getting the band back together, talking about the 150th edition of the Run for the Roses. But Chris, I have to say, man, I'm so sorry about what happened last night. I as soon as you tweeted out what could go wrong, everything completely went wrong. Can you tell us about your bet with the Guardians, my man?
Yeah. For people who aren't familiar, I had the Guardians to have the best record in baseball in March and April, and we were sitting there 1 out away from what would have wound up being a dead heat on that at DraftKings. It would have been a dead heat rules would have applied because he would have wound up splitting it with the Phillies. But something is a heck of a lot better than nothing. If you had the bet at Circa, you would have won the whole caboodle itself based on the tie break. But yeah, I made that bet 50-1, and the last few days did not go well. Hunter Gaddis is someone who I may buy a ticket for a Yankees game this year, as close to the Cleveland bullpen as I can, and just absolutely ride him and request his Venmo for a 5-figure payout with what he owes me for what he did, not only last night allowing the 10th inning home run, and what he did in Atlanta when Cleveland was nursing the 3-1 lead in the 8th. So Hunter Gaddis is someone who will forever be on the list.
They pulled their closer out instead of letting him finish. And that home run was like a line drive. That thing was hit hard, man. It was barely a launch angle on that, like a 9-degree driver or something, right? It's ridiculous.
And then never more than like 20 feet off the ground.
And like I said, I'm so sorry. As soon as you said that, I'm like, I gotta watch the ending. And then I just on your thread, I'm just like, OMG. That's all I said is OMG. What the hell? Well,
I would see it would have been so much easier had they just lost. I mean, they got up 3-0, and then they were down 8-3. And I was watching flipping back and forth between the Islanders, Canes, and the Leafs, Bruins, and I was like, oh, now, and someone's like, oh, it's 8-5, and then they tied it up. It would have been so much easier if they just would have lost 8-3, and you wouldn't have had like the second life and think you had a chance. But to lose the way we did was just brutal for those of us who had that bet.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sorry for that. I feel like that happens more often than winning it when at the end it just completely crumbles. Of course it does. Well, man, we have a big Kentucky Derby coming up here. We're going to talk a heck of a lot about that. But hey, before we get into the big race, I have to talk some football with you guys, being such great football minds. Chris, here we are again, the Jets. Last year we were talking Aaron Rodgers is coming back and coming to the Jets, actually. And I mean, what are your thoughts on them? What do you think about the draft?
I was surprised they did the right thing in the draft. Usually when you're talking about the Jets, they never do the right thing in the draft. But bypassing, trading back a spot to pick up an extra pick later in the draft, they lost so many picks, didn't have a second-round pick because of the Rodgers trade, and not taking Brock Bowers and resisting that temptation and taking up Olu Fanashu, the offensive lineman from Penn State, was the smart move, because I know they added Tyron Smith in free agency, but if you're banking on him to start 17 games, it's not going to happen. See, Fanashu is someone you can slide in there, maybe at guard if you need to play. An investment in the offensive line is an investment in the well-being of the team. So I was happy they made that pick. Not only because I had Jets at plus 175 for offensive linemen from months ago as well, but for the well-being of the team. And look, they have a bunch of win now type contracts that they brought in this year with Smith, with Mike Williams, and you got Garrett Wilson on the outside in Hall now. If they can protect Aaron Rodgers and he's healthy, who's to say they can't be involved in that division? Because if you look at the division, the Patriots aren't going to contend. The Dolphins are worse than what they were last year with the losses that they had, including Christian Wilkins and others. Buffalo is worse than they were. Buffalo still has the best quarterback in the division, but overall as a team with the players that they lost, they're not in as good of a position. So the division is certainly there for them. And I'm not going to get my hopes up like I did last year because it lasted all of about 4 plays. But it would not surprise me to see the Jets contend and not only to be a wild card, but certainly in that division.
Well, just don't tweet what could go wrong again, and you might be onto something. I'm going to lose some money in the Jets again. I took them to win the division.
Let's do it.
I mean, why not? It's like I feel like a Jets fan almost when I do that. I can feel like I did for so many years as a Bears fan and just double it up. But I still think, I don't like Buffalo's draft. I think they lost a ton of players. I still think that middle linebacker, if Milano doesn't stay healthy, Bernard came in and got hurt too. They just have so many holes now, and then you lose your top receivers and you draft kind of a guy that was supposed to go a little bit later. I do like Keon Coleman, but he was a little bit slow in the 40. I said he probably shouldn't have even ran the 40, if it could be that slow. It is the Jets to lose, in my opinion. Buffalo's to lose, but the Jets, I think, should be a big contender here. And, Aaron Rodgers, if he can be even just a shell of himself over the past few years, they got the talent to do it. So I agree with that. But going to Marco, what is your big infatuation with Bears quarterbacks over in Pittsburgh? I am absolutely blown away that you took another one after the whole Mitch Trubisky deal. What's going on there, man?
Well, I definitely think Justin Fields has a little bit of a better upside in, I don't see him as the starter. It's going to be Russell Wilson's job to lose. And, the Steelers, I mean, when have they been this active in free agency? This is a really change of their character, and I like it. The Russell Wilson move was an absolute no-brainer. I mean, they basically got him for a ham sandwich. He's going to be playing with a major chip on his shoulder for the way things played out in Denver this year. And he had 26 touchdown passes. You can add up the last 2 seasons, every Steeler quarterback's touchdown passes, and it doesn't equal 26 touchdowns. Okay. So I'm happy with that. And then if you look at what they did in the draft, they went out and did what they needed to do. I mean, we're looking at first round draft pick. You go for an offensive tackle, get a stud there. Second round, you get a center. I like the center. I think it was from West Virginia. Pick up a wide receiver in the third round. I'm sure if you're Kenny Pickett, you're sitting there looking at this draft and saying, where the hell was this kind of draft for me to help me get some things done? But new offensive coordinator, new GM. I like what I'm seeing there. I don't want to drink the home Three Rivers of water, but yeah. I think the Steelers really have made themselves better. And then don't forget about, the signing in the offseason. They stole a player from Baltimore. You made our defense better picking up Queen, and you hurt your main competitor in the division. So that's like, a double bonus for the Steelers. So I think they're, as it should be, it's going to be Baltimore and Pittsburgh in that division.
Yeah, PFF gave them an A+, and I think they did what was right by going offensive line, and the offensive line went quick, and I barely got under my 9.5 for that one. So I was
you and me both.
Yeah, it was plus 160. I was like, oh my God, at the end. And what took it over was that crazy receiver prop that went over again. And I said since
20, baby.
Did you take that too?
Oh yeah, I did.
Oh my! And you know
what? Of course, it came down to the final pick.
Of course, and everyone, I mean, except you, was looking under, and I said on the show, I fell in this trap before. GMs fall in love real quick, and they fell in love again and got 7 receivers. Which, even though I completely disagree with that, it happened, and I said if I had to bet it, I bet over because that's how they think. And here we are. The trade up from Carolina, thinking that it's going to help their bust of a quarterback, Bryce. Well, we'll see if he's a bust, but he's not looking so good right now in Bryce.
Yeah. The Pearsall pick by San Francisco was the one that made it possible. Like you needed the Niners to take a receiver, and they did. And then you were like, huh.
Exactly. And then the Bears. obviously for first time ever, normally when the Bears get the first pick of the draft, it's like the Kenny Pickett year, the Malik Willis year. That's what we usually expect. But for some reason, you have a loaded quarterback class in the Bears. I have to be happy because, I did have Caleb Williams as my number one guy. And, there's some thoughts that, trade down for Daniels. Williams did enough, in my opinion, to earn the first pick of the draft. And we also got Iowa's best offensive player, Chris and Marco, because their punter was their best offensive player and Taylor. So, what's interesting, and if you look at it, it's like, why would you spend a 4th round draft pick on a punter? Well, a lot of 4th round draft picks don't pan out in the NFL. And if you look at every single pick in the draft, which is kind of funny, I really think that the punter might be the least chance of a bust because he might be better than the other punters out there, Chris. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, and Caleb was joking with him about you're not going to be punting very much. So welcome, we love you, but you're not going to be punting a lot. But no, special teams and punter is a weapon in this league. If you've got someone who can maximize field position and flip a field, that's a great thing. And a lot of those hidden yards don't necessarily always go noticed by people watching the game. But for those of us who bet this stuff and we look at a lot of advanced numbers, field position differential and things like that, it certainly affects punting. Certainly affects maybe some team totals and how you handicap a game.
Absolutely. And you know what? If it comes down to it and you got to punt, it really makes a difference. Special teams make a difference, and field position does make a difference in the NFL. And with all the rule changes and everything, right? It is.
That's what Iowa's t-shirts say, right? Punting is winning.
For Iowa, it certainly was. And that was, that team could have a total of 29 and you'd still bet the under last year. So we'll see if this punter kind of lives up to what his draft is. But, I'm pretty happy with it. I really liked Rome Odunze too. I was pretty surprised that he fell to the Bears. I thought he was going to go a little bit earlier, Chris, but I was pleasantly surprised. But lots still left to happen. But hey, college football. I know Marco's rebooting right now. Why don't you talk us a little bit about college football? There's so many changes going on with the 14-team playoffs now, and obviously the consolidation of the conferences with the Pac-12 kind of going away and the Big Ten getting 4 teams and the SEC getting some teams and all the changes. Have you made any early plays, Chris?
Yeah, I played Georgia back when they first posted these odds. It was either December or January. I played them. I got them at like plus 425 or so. In that range, I'd have to go back and look to win the title just because they're going to be in the playoff. And they were the best team last year. They just happened to lose at the wrong time. A couple of unfortunate events, obviously, in the SEC title game. But they're the most talented team. And to be able to just file that away for a year from now, I don't mind having some money in my FanDuel account there. That had been a bet made in New York because I can't even bet it in Connecticut. So I got Georgia at that number. And then the other bet that I made just a little bit ago, I played Miami at around plus 550 or so to win the ACC. I think it was 550. Look, I'm not a Miami homer at all, but if you look at the players that they have brought in the portal, Cam Ward, notably one of them, a quarterback to kind of re-energize that offense, and they brought in some other guys on offense and defense to help. The schedule is super easy. I think Florida State is obviously going to take a step back with everybody that they lose from a year ago. And I'm Clemson. I'm not sure that we're ever going to see the Clemson that we saw that run from, say, 2012 to 2020 or so.
2022, yeah.
Yeah, I don't think we're going to get that again. So I think in the ACC, if you look at Miami's schedule, is wide open. I think they have an opportunity to win that league, and that number I thought was really good.
Yeah, that's a very good number. Plus, it's plus 450 right now here on DraftKings, and so shows some line value there, and Georgia to win it all at plus 320 on DraftKings. So pretty good line value there. My question really is about
with Miami. Miami got it. Well, different site. They're different. I got to go back to the other site and look. It was it's a different site that I played it on. I got to log into that one to find out. I was just going to give you the accurate number.
Oh, no problem. And we'll wait on that. Well, my question really, with the playoffs, you wonder if Georgia is plus 320 a good bet. Now, I wonder about a money line rollover. I mean, is Georgia going to be 14-point favorites? Maybe the first game, which would be what minus 900.
I lied. 435. It was 435.
Okay, 435 on Miami or Georgia?
Miami.
Okay, 435. Okay, and so close. They're close right now, what you can get, but you definitely have the good line value on Georgia. I mean, how many playoff games is it going to take to win? If you are going to get a bye, right? If you're one of the top 4 teams,
yes.
And so that makes it 3 playoff games. Well, yeah, if Georgia's going to be favored throughout the whole time, then that could be some line value. Then you got Ohio State, then you got Texas. Then you have Oregon, LSU, Alabama kind of going down from there. So that's interesting. I think with all the change, just going to be a very exciting football season. So pretty excited about that. But what's also exciting, what we came to talk about, my man, the Kentucky Derby here. And Marco is back here as well, had a reboot. So welcome back, Marco. We have to talk a little bit about the 150th edition, Marco. What makes this year so special?
Well, you got controversy, obviously. No Baffert again for was it third year in a row now with the situation. The owners of Muth went and tried to overturn the decision and to have the horse put in, but you know what? That's their fault. They wanted to stick by Mr. Baffert, and they could have moved her horse to another trainer and not had the problem. So they're missing out on the Derby. That's, I can't feel sorry for them. It's a black eye for the sport with Bob Baffert, with what's happened and the situation being, he was the most recognizable face in the sport. I mean, let's face it. He was everywhere. He was a media darling, and for the stuff to happen the way it did, and then every time, that there was a positive with him, testing positive for something, he always had an excuse. Everything was, he had as many excuses as LeBron James does after losing a series. Okay, so that gets old after a while.
Tainted. What was it? The tainted seed from some grass, the salon pass, the groom peed in the hay. Yeah, it was always something.
I mean, it's music to my ears as such a Jordan fan to hear that stuff. And I've never understood the comparison in my life, but I am not getting into that because that is the biggest, craziest social media war that I will like staying away from. So either way, the NBA is its own animal, but yeah, the LeBron James is funny how you talk about that because excuses are being made here in the Kentucky Derby, but it's 150th anniversary here, and it's got those big round numbers, and we have a kind of a wonderful field. But Marco, what do you think about the handle on this baby? You think it's going to be bigger than any in the past years with all the more sports betting going on, or less?
I'm actually torn on that. When you sent us that question yesterday, I've said, I don't know which way to look at it because one, you've got more people than ever betting, but there's so many choices for them to bet on. We always said horse racing, was a dying sport because, everybody looks at it and says that, you walk into a sports book here in Vegas and all you see are old, bald, fat guys, sitting around, playing horses. And yes, I resemble that remark.
You and me both.
But, if you go
not that old,
if you go to places like Del Mar or Gulfstream, these places, it's a party. I mean, and you do see the younger crowd, coming there. And, so we could have a record handle, but the only thing we don't have this year, we don't have that superstar horse. There's some good horses in this field, but I don't think this is one of our elite crops of 3-year-olds. I think there's some good 3-year-olds, but I don't see a standout in this race. I can make a case, and when we get into the Derby, I don't know how deep Chris is. I can make a case for 6 to 8 horses in this race easily.
Okay,
Yeah.
interesting. So
Yeah.
go ahead, Chris.
I can too. We'll get it, but to piggyback on what you were saying about the handle and betting and so many options to bet on this race, who amongst us wouldn't like to be able to bet a parlay with Fierceness to win the Kentucky Derby with the Nuggets to win the NBA title, or Just a Touch to win the Derby with the Carolina Hurricanes to win the Stanley Cup? Like, that's the opportunity for horse racing to become a little bit more mainstream, I think. You want to boost the handle of the track. You boost the handle in the sports books themselves. Like, I'm surprised with FanDuel taking over TVG and now being a branded FanDuel TV, like, why this isn't possible yet. Why can't you bet solid standalone numbers in horse racing outside of the pari-mutuel pool, parlay it with another sport winner? I love betting those cross-sport parlays. Like, who wouldn't want to take a chance with a long shot in the Derby with the Celtics to win the NBA title? I think that's something that the United States sports betting market, I think that's kind of like the next frontier to be able to figure out a way to get that done.
Yeah, 100%. I love mixing it up, and hopefully that could increase the handle, right? As long as they allow it at the books. And I just feel that there is going to be a decent handle myself. I have no idea. I'm guessing it, obviously, but I expect a pretty big handle for this big event. I just think the number of people that have money in certain books is going to able to, just use a little bit here for the Kentucky Derby, just kind of make it interesting since such a big event in the United States, best 2 minutes in sports. So, well, let's talk about the weather, Chris. Have you gotten an update of the weather? Are we going to have a mud? Or are we going to have some nice?
Looks like Friday is going to be a little bit sketchy. Looks like there's going to be a good bit of rain on Friday. So I'm sure the races will be run on the turf. And remember, Churchill has had a bevy of issues with that turf course since redoing it. I guess it would have been 2 falls ago, and they've had a bunch of issues. So we'll see if that turf course holds up on Friday if they do get a bit of rain. So I think there's a chance we might get an off track for the Oaks on Friday. And then it looks like whatever rain's going to be in the area will probably move out on Saturday morning. So I would be surprised if we did not have at least a good track, if not a fast track, by the time the Derby goes on Saturday evening. I've been to enough of these where it's kind of been overcast and rainy in the morning, and then you look at the track come 6 o'clock at night, and it doesn't look like anything happened. So the way I'm going to handicap it is Friday I'm going to handle as an off track and a soft or yielding turf, and then Saturday I'm going to handle the early part of the races as kind of good and still kind of a yielding type turf, and then the later part of the card I'm going to handicap as a fast track.
Okay, well, there you go. So there's a little update, and that's always subject to change, but spring is always sketchy. So, we'll see what happens, but I'm looking forward to some good weather. Hey, Marco, you talked a little bit about, you have 6 horses, and it's, I always like to ask you if Fierceness is the deserving favorite, if Sierra Leone is deserving right there next to Fierceness. I feel like Fierceness is inconsistent. And how the heck is his price 2.5 to 1, 5 to 2 right now? Is that correct?
It's a recency bias. His Florida Derby was so impressive, and the Florida Derby has been the best producer winner of the Kentucky Derby. Going that path through Florida to the Kentucky Derby has been the way to go. Yeah, this horse is, to use the term in horse racing, he has the bounce factor. He has the good outing, and then he comes back with a subpar, effort. But you know what? When you go back and watch the race in the Florida Derby, Johnny V never moved his hands. I mean, that was almost scary the way he opened up in the Florida Derby with really no urging. So if he duplicates that, they don't run suicide fractions. If he does get to the lead early, he's going to be tough to beat. Now, if you ask me personally, which horse I like better, him or Sierra Leone. I like Sierra Leone as a horse. Now, the problem is you can't have two horses that are more opposite in racing styles than these two horses. And unfortunately for Sierra Leone, everybody thinks the Kentucky Derby, because they're going farther than they've ever gone so far. It's not the 1.5 miles of the Belmont, obviously, but these horses haven't raced 1.25 miles yet. So everybody thinks, well, can they get the distance? You think it's going to be a closer. Well, stone closers have major problems in the Derby. They got to deal with two different things. First, they got to get an honest pace. And what people don't understand is if you go a slow first half, I don't care how fast of a horse you are, you're not making up the ground if you're coming from last. The other problem is none of these horses have raced in a race that has 20 horses in it, and they probably never will again. So if you're coming from the back, you got to navigate through 20 horses. And let's face it, there's 5-6 horses that don't even belong in this race. You're going to have to bob and weave around them. There's going to be horses that were involved in the race early that are going to tire. They're going to be coming back at you when you're trying to make your move. And if you have to tap the brakes, or in horsemen's terms, you have to check your horse, these are not automobiles. You can't just press on the gas and start them right back up. You lose momentum, and it takes a split second to regain that. And in horse racing, that's all it can take to have a hole shut down on you and lose a race. So Sierra Leone, I think, is the best horse in this race, but might be compromised by the trip that the horse is going to get.
Sierra Leone in the 2 spot here for the Derby. So, Chris, do you agree with this? I did see a Triple Crown odds at 10-1. Do you agree with Marco? And what are your thoughts on that?
One thing to keep in mind with the Triple Crown, if you are going to bet odds to win Triple Crown this year, remember the Belmont is going to be at Saratoga this year, so it's not going to be that 1.5 mile race. It's going to be shorter. So that may, however you want to view that, you may view that as it's going to help the horse be able to manage the third leg of the Triple Crown if they do get there with an easier race. Or you could view it as it brings more horses into play because at 1.5 miles, it kind of limited potentially who ultimately could win. So I agree with Marco in both of his sentiments on Sierra Leone and Fierceness. I think Sierra Leone could wind up being the best horse of this three-year-old class, but where he is in post 2 is a death knell. And Marco laid it out perfectly. He's going to have to deal with potentially being slammed down into the rail and then falling back into the field, falling behind the horses, and then having to pass 19 horses at some point during the race. It's just not going to be possible. The best jockey in the world isn't going to be able to do that. And it kind of reminds me a little bit of Curlin, who I think it was 2007, was a future Breeders' Cup Classic winner and one of the best horses of his generation. He drew post 2, and not even he could maneuver better than a third place finish. So I don't. If Sierra Leone wins the race, God bless him. He's a super horse, but he will not be doing it with me using him in the win spot. The interesting thing about Fierceness is, again, how will he handle adversity? Because I think you almost need to handicap the race 2 different ways. You need to have the first way of Fierceness gets the easy lead, he breaks, everything goes his way, and he wins. And then maybe you put some long shots underneath them or whoever you like, and you press those tickets hard because he's a shorter price. Or you do the other way of handicapping it, which is the way I'm leaning right now of really focusing on as well, of he's going to have Track Phantom. He's going to have Forever Young. He's going to have Dornoch. Maybe he has another horse on the lead with him. And we've seen him in the Champagne and the Holy Bull. When he didn't get things his own way, he's kind of thrown in the towel. And if he has not overcome adversity by now in those races, what makes you believe that in a 20-horse field, in the biggest race of his life, with over 100,000 people there screaming and yelling, that he's going to do it then? So I think you kind of need to be prepared for that outcome. Well, I think we all agree that Fierceness is the best or the second best horse in the race, and if he makes the lead, he's going to win. It doesn't always work that way. Come Kentucky Derby.
Okay, no, makes total sense, and that's a long way to close. I mean, if he's really going to get set back, Sierra Leone, that is, all the way back to the 19th or 18th spot, yeah, that's a hell of a long run to come back. So you kind of gave us a little tell on what your thoughts are when it comes to building your card. But, no Bob Baffert, Marco, as we know that, and very deservingly, in my opinion, and probably we all share that. But there's no Muth because of that. He tried to sue to get back in, like we mentioned. And does that mean that we're getting the best field? You said there's 6 horses here that you think you can say. I mean, without Muth, what would he be rated, you think? And are we getting is this field as good as some of the other Kentucky Derbies, Marco?
Well, I definitely don't think that this field is as good as some of the past editions we've had. I think this is a very competitive crop with some of the horses. Like I said, if I can make a case for 6 to 8 horses to win the Derby, it's competitive. And a lot of times people, when we talk about in football or something, if you have a division where everybody's 500, you say, oh, that's a mediocre division. Well, what if those 4 teams are all good teams, and they're just beating each other up? And that's what I think you kind of have with this year's crop. And the couple top horses, what we've talked about, haven't faced off against one another yet. You always have those territorial wars where you try to avoid each other because you want to get the lion's share of the points to get into the Derby. So, why go in, battle one of the main contenders early? One goes to the Florida Derby, one goes to, the Bluegrass, and one goes to the Santa Anita Derby, and so forth. And, now we're going to see where it is. Muth, yes, he would have been, one of the horses that you would have been looking at in here. But because he's not here, I don't think that that's a disgrace. I think we're still going to have a good race, and then we'll see what happens. You'll see him show up down the road, and then he can make a statement then.
Okay. Well, Chris, who's going to be taking the lead in setting the pace in this race? Is it going to be some fast fractions coming here? How do you think the fractions are going to go?
No, I think the fractions are essentially guaranteed to be fast, because I think obviously Fierceness drawn outside needs to send to avoid being hung out super wide like Point Given was from a far outside post in 2001. I think the way Track Phantom has been working and adding blinkers, the horse has never not been on the lead. So, like, if that horse somehow isn't on the lead, they're doing the horse, and the fans and the betting and the owners and the betting public, everyone, a disservice by adding the blinkers and then not putting him on the lead. So the horse has never not been on the lead. He'll be on the lead. Forever Young, the horse from Japan, one of the 2 horses from Japan, is another horse that likes to be on the lead. Supposedly he doesn't like kickback, and that probably doesn't sound like a very good thing for his prospective chances on Saturday in a 20-horse field. So you throw him into the mix. And then there's the 1-horse Dornock, who the only way he knows is on the lead, and he has a rider in Luis Saez, who is one of the more aggressive riders out there. If you watch a lot of Gulfstream Park and some other, like he rides to the front, and in breaking from the rail, he's got to break and go to the front. So you're looking at potentially 5 horses there, all that want a piece of the lead, and that doesn't even include Just a Touch, who was kind of chasing fast fractions in the Bluegrass, who I think he's probably going to read and see what the break is like for Lancheroux, and ideally for a good trip for him, probably fall just behind. But I think you've got 4, if not 5, just completely dedicated front runners, and I think this pace is going to set up pretty quickly. Maybe not for one of the stone closers like we talked about, but someone from that second flight.
Marco, you agree?
I agree, and I'll throw one more horse in. The Scratch of Encino, although he likes to go to the front too, would have had an easier path from the 9-hole. Now you put in Epic Ride from the outside, who also likes to be near the front. If they leave with that horse from the outside, you could get some, stupid fractions up front. So yeah, I agree. We're going to get, at the worst, let's call it an honest pace to a fast pace.
Okay, good stuff. Well, it's funny. I'm trying to figure out how I'm going to compile my ticket. I don't know yet. I'm looking at Fierceness, and I mean, his price, it's just with his inconsistency, I almost feel like I should use him on the top of a ticket, but not even in the middle. It's like, is he going to like just not even place, not even show, and take first? Or if he doesn't take first, is he going to be not in the obviously winning or taking second or third? What do you guys think about this horse? Are you going to be using him kind of as a saver type ticket, Marco? Is it a situation where you really like this horse?
Well, the way I attack it, and Kiev, from all the times I've sent you my plays, that what I like to do when I build my trifecta ticket is I do the pyramid method. I'll start, with say 3 horses on top, and then I'll branch out, 4 or 5 horses in the second tier, and then a little deeper on the bottom, because in a race like this, we always talk about there's so much dead money. I will spend more money on the Derby than I will spend on any other race during the year, because that the prices are going to be inflated with all the extra money in the pool. What I try to do is I handicap the race all the different ways. And there's 3 type of horses. The front runner that steals a race, like we saw with Authentic and Medina Spirit, that went slow fractions and couldn't get caught. The suicide race where they go ridiculous front end, and then you have a horse like Rich Strike come from the clouds to win a race. And then the race, the style that is the most consistent in the Derby, and that's the stalker position. Those horses that are just off that first flight. This way, if it is a fast pace, they got the jump on the closers when they're making their move and avoiding the traffic. And if it is fast fractions up front, they're not involved in it, but yet if it's a slow fractions, they're close enough to still be in the race. So what I try to do on that top line is find my best horse that I like for the front end style, find my best stalker, and then the insurance policy is if they do go the suicide fractions and that stone closer can get there, I'm going to have him somewhere on that ticket. Meaning I'm not going to let Sierra Leone, the horse that I think is the best horse of this 3-year-old crop, get fast fractions and not get stopped and bob and weave through traffic and get there, and me sitting there not having the Kentucky Derby. So that's how I'll construct the top level of my trifecta ticket.
Yeah, I think Kiev, when it comes to my view on Fierceness, I don't think we're going to be sitting here Saturday night saying, oh, wow, Fierceness ran a really good third. Like, I think he either wins or he's off the board. I just think that it just based on how he's run in the past and what I think he's up against in the pace scenario, I think it's win or he's going to finish 8th or 9th.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I'm thinking. It's like, how much do I want to spend? I almost feel like if I'm trying to save Fierceness, because he's going to place a second or third, it's going to cost me a lot more money just because of the amount I'm going to be investing in this Derby. And as Marco mentioned before, there's so much dead money in this. We have big tickets. Marco's always had big tickets, and it's worked out very well for him. Chris, the same thing. It's just, and that's when I'm kind of coming back and forth on. Do I want to, put him at second or third, just to try to have some sort of a saver? Because obviously, if it's Sierra Leone, Fierceness, and let's just say just a touch, 1, 2, 3. That's not going to be too big of a ticket, That's going to be one of those like, oh, I won. Then I'm like, oh, no, I didn't win. Those situations, especially for the people that haven't bet a lot of horse racing and might not expect that, and it just hits them across the head. So that's interesting. But hey, the fun part is who are these disgusting horses we are throwing off? Now, I know if you're in the Kentucky Derby, there is not too much, every horse is pretty deserving in some way. But Chris, why don't you tell us some of the horses that you are tossing off of your ticket?
Dornoch, the 1 horse, will not be on my ticket. The 5 horse Catalytic will not be on my ticket. The 10 horse TO Password will not be on my ticket. The 12 horse Track Phantom will not be on my ticket. The 13 horse West Saratoga will not be on my ticket. The 14 horse Endlessly will not be on my ticket. The 16 horse Grand Mo the First will not be on my ticket. and the 20 horse Society Man will not be on my ticket. So what is that? About 8 or 9 horses I just named. That's the thing. I think there are a bunch of slow horses in this race that really have no chance of hitting the board. The funny thing is, I mentioned the horse Endlessly, the 14 horse Mike McCarthy's horse. I've been listening and consuming a bunch of pods and a bunch of interviews and like to hear Mike McCarthy talk about Endlessly, like he basically is saying without saying it, I know the horse is a turf horse and a synthetic horse, and he has not worked well at Churchill Downs, but the owner has Derby fever and he's going to run. So like it's a vanity entry, and that's fine. The horse, if he's got the points to do it, then by look, I had the horse in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf. So I mean, I like the horse, but he's not bred for dirt, and the owner wants to run, and so be it. So I think if you can kind of find horses like that you can throw out and feel good about, it certainly helps narrow down the scope of your ticket.
Yeah, I wrote Good Trip and the Jeff Ruby, but would have to close. And yeah, I wrote. I didn't write what you just said there, so thank you for that. It sounds like he's more of a turf horse, so that's
yes.
That I said use at the end, but maybe that would sway me from even doing that. What's funny on Catalytic, I said blown out in the Florida Derby because pretty much everyone was blown out. But I said I want to bet that bird that passed Fierceness at the end. There was this bird that just flew by super fast. Like, where does this bird come from? It's not.
The funny thing here was I actually had Catalytic in the Florida Derby as a price horse, and just because Safi Joseph runs so well down there, and the horse with the price, the field was so bad. I'm like, I just need to try and turn 2 to 5 on Fierceness into something, and he did get second. But Safi doesn't travel very well to Kentucky, and I'm not sure that adding an extra furlong on there to 1.25 miles is really going to do that horse, Catalina Cruiser, really any justice.
All right, makes sense. Marco, what about you? Do you agree with what Chris is tossing off of his ticket? Is there any other ones that you're not going to be on?
Oh, we basically have almost all the same horses. I have the 5 tossed off, and and my note on the 5 is that the Safi Joseph's horses, when they travel, they don't like the food on the road. I guess they like food at home. That's all I'll say. I have the 10 thrown off. I have the 13, the 16, and the 20. The only reason I didn't I've heard everything that the trainer has said on Endlessly, and as an owner myself, I know there is something to having Derby fever, big race fever. It's there, but there was another horse that ran in a Kentucky Derby that hadn't run on dirt and was very good to me, and I'll always there'll be a soft spot in my heart, and that's Animal Kingdom. Did it for me, and that was one of my bigger scores. That one in the year that Looking at Lee finished second. When I talk about that Derby, it was because I had the horse that ran second that made the ticket. That was my key horse. So you always remember those big ones. And,
got up for second from the rail at like 30-something to 1, right?
Yeah. Yep. And I even had a futures ticket on that horse too, so that was, seeing him bobbing and, coming up the rail that was fun. Yeah. Last year or Rich Strike year wasn't fun when I had Epicenter for 33 to 1 ticket. That one made me want to puke.
Well, Chris just mentioned Country. Was it Country Barn? Country
House.
Country House. Yeah. When you snuck in there, I remember. I think wasn't that the one with the disqualification? Was that
the DQ of a lifetime when maximum security got taken down? That was it was beautiful to be there and be the lone person in the clubhouse box area going crazy while everybody was silent after the second choice or the favorite, whatever. I think it was the second choice actually. I got taken down, and the Derby gods did me and the sport good that day by getting ahead on Jason Service and not making sure that he was going to be a Kentucky Derby winning trainer.
All right, all right. Well, is there a public dog in this race? I mean, it's funny. I'm curious who the public's going to be on. I always like to. Doesn't mean it's going to lose. It's just
Right.
what they like. Marco, do you think obviously Fierceness is going to be a public one, and I would guess Sierra Leone's going to be pretty public? Is there like a 8-1 public one that's just not looking so good for you? What do you think?
Well, the horse that's I've heard getting buzz is the Japanese horse, and every year we hear this. They come over and there's some buzz to them, and then they don't run well.
Forever Yours.
I will say this much though. I'm a big, a lot of my handicapping is what I see with my eyes, and I go back and I watch replays. This horse is one gutty son of a bitch. I'm going to tell you that because the fact that he doesn't, they say that the horse doesn't like to, have dirt thrown in his face. Well, if you watched his races, you understand they're serious about that because they keep this horse so wide in every race. The one race, he was 4 or 5 wide the entire race and still ground out the win. You're sitting there watching the replay. I already, have the racing form in front of me. I know the horse wins the race, but as I'm watching the race, I'm saying, how the heck can you win this race? There's no way that you can live on the outside this wide and continue to do it. And you go back to 2 starts back, the Saudi Derby. There was no way I thought he was going to reach in that race. At the top of the lane, he looked like he was hopelessly out of it, and the horse just keeps grinding and grinding and grinding. I think this is the best horse that's come from Japan of all the ones that we've seen. But again, you want to talk about, there's a couple of history things in the Kentucky Derby. Nobody's won from post 17. No Japanese horses won. We could have both of those, go by the wayside. But if the 17 one, we'll talk about that later, that would have to get an asterisk, right, Chris?
Yeah, exactly. It's interesting too, Mark, because I don't know ultimately where you're landing on this race, but if you look at Forever Young, the way he has worked, one of the guys I follow on Twitter basically said, looked like he was playing hopscotch working over the track. Like it was not a good work. I guess both of his works have not looked good. So it'll be curious to see what happens on Saturday, how he runs, because if you're a workout guy and you're looking to see how these horses work over the track, Forever Young probably gets moved down a couple of notches.
All right. Well, there you go. Forever Young sounds like a public horse here.
Yeah,
well,
he is. And I think there are going to be 2 other ones as well, Kiev, before you get to the next question. I think, again, if you like Forever Young, bet him at a fixed shop. If you like Catching Freedom, I would bet him at a fixed odds shop because he is certainly going to get bet down as he's gotten a lot of buzz. And if you like Anna Marie, I would bet him at a fixed odds shop because he's 20-1 in the morning line. And I would be surprised if he weren't somewhere in like the 12-1 range come post time. So if you like Forever Young, Anna Marie, or Catching Freedom, I would certainly look to try and find a fixed shop right now before too much money gets put in those pools and maybe even affects the fixed prices.
Okay. No, that makes sense. And obviously those are for horizontals. Verticals have the the exactas, the trifectas, and you're going to have to deal with the switched odds in those. But if you'd like someone to win or place or show, especially to win, that's really what Chris is talking about here. That's where you would bet them because their number goes down. I've seen many times in the Derby where someone was 2.5 to 1, 2 to 1, and it's went down, in those situations, some of those favorites. So that's interesting. Well, Marco, Chris asked the question, man, who you keen on this race, buddy? Who wins the Derby? Who do you think makes their big tickets?
Well, how much I like Sierra Leone. I've made no bones about that, but the horse is going to be compromised by the trip. But if you like Sierra Leone as much as I do, how can I not like Just a Touch? Okay. And I'm going to be getting much better odds on Just a Touch. I'm going to be in a much better position. And I hope that because of all the speed that is in the race, that they just sit off the pace with this horse. This horse has only had 3 career starts. He's got a license to jump up. I say this to you guys every year that you can see these 3-year-olds make major leaps and bounds from, start 3 to 4 to start 5. And what he showed me running second to Sierra Leone, chasing extremely fast fractions for only his third career start. And you look at the buyers, the horse is, gone forward, in every race. I think this horse has a big shot to, make that leap. And if we get the, fierceness that takes a step backwards, I think, Just a Touch is going to be the horse that's going to make that move at the top of the stretch and have the jump on all the closers. So that's my horse that I'm going with. Ticket wise, I'm going to be playing, like I said, I'm not going to have Fierceness beat me. He'll be on my ticket, and I'm not going to have Sierra Leone beat me. They'll be somewhere on my ticket. So as I said, I'm looking for the front runner, the stalker, and the closer. They'll be there. But I got some long shots that I think have a big, big chance of being in there. I think Chris already mentioned one of them, Honor Marie. I think this horse is going to run big as well. Catching Freedom, moving in the right direction. This horse is getting better each start, been training well. And I'm going to throw one out there that probably a lot of people will shy away from, simply because the Wood Memorial is not a race that's had good success recently. But Bill Mott is not one of these guys that will put a horse in just to make himself feel warm and fuzzy. No shot at Dean Wade and Lucas. Lucas he wants to be in the Derby, whether the horse should be there or not be there. The fact that Bill Mott's here, this horse has a shot. The horse is improving. Now, the problem is he's got, the Wood, and I'm one to say it. I can't remember a horse. When's the last horse to come out of the Wood that was
2003, Empire Maker and Funny Side.
Okay.
Last time the Wood winner won the Derby.
Look at this trivia guy right here.
Yeah, this is a horse that I think that is going in the right direction. And if you watch, and what impressed me is this horse, young horses don't like to make moves, okay? Sometimes in tight quarters. Man, when this horse split the hole with no hesitation and then just swelled up the minute got through it, that impresses me. So that's a horse that I'm going to have on my ticket as well.
Did you say Resilience? Which one?
Resilience. Yep.
Resilience, which is number 19. Okay. Yep. Okay. Resilience. All right. Writing this down. So, do you think that you like, because of Just a Touch, do you like the fact that his sire is Just a Touch? Is that part of it?
Well, if somebody wants to throw out, I forgot to mention that you have the other myth that got snapped was no horse wins the Derby that didn't race it too. This horse didn't race it too. But who was the last horse that did win that didn't race it too? Oh, yeah, it was Daddy himself, Justify. So, thanks. I had that in my notes and I forgot to bring that one up.
It's really interesting, Marco, that you brought that up, because I jotted down a bunch of stuff, and just for getting ready for my call, I'm going to throw up on fox.sports.com that Just a Touch. 2018, you had Justify unraced at 2. Fourth race was the Derby 1. Last year, Mage unraced at 2. Fourth race of his career was the Derby 1. So it's kind of like the old school way of doing things. It doesn't really apply with the modern way of racing anymore. And the conversation that we had last year, I'm remembering it now, about how we were saying, if you like Forte at 8-5 or whatever he was before he got scratched, how the hell don't you like Mage at 17-1? Like, he was right there with him. At Gulfstream, you're getting so much of a better number. And I am completely with you on Just a Touch. Like, why Giroux chased that rabbit that Chad had in the race to set it up for Sierra Leone? Like, he was too close to it. He's not going to have to do that here. And I mentioned the Empire Maker Funny Side here. Like, we see that so often in these preps where Empire Maker won the Wood, won the preps down there, and then Funny Side won the first Saturday in May. It happened with Real Quiet in '98 as well when he won the Derby. He wasn't Baffert's best horse, and he wasn't great in the preps, but he had the great day. Like you could make the case that Just a Touch ran a better race than Sierra Leone did at Keeneland in the Bluegrass just because of where he was positioned in the race. So like he's won on an off track. You know he can do that. He should be able to get the distance. I think Giroux is in a good spot because I think he's going to be able to react to whatever happens in the break. If he's a little too close to the lead, I'm going to be upset. But if it just comes his way, then so be it. But you don't want to, like you said, you don't want to be too far back. You want to be up or near the lead in this race. And I think Just a Touch fits right there. Resilience, you mentioned him, and I like him as well. Adding blinkers was a massive thing for him. Like he has shown so much more maturity and focus since the blinkers. And remember, look 2 races back. His first race against winners was in that Risen Star where he wasn't embarrassed at all against Sierra Leone down there. Like, this is a horse with a bunch of talent. His buyer figures might be a little light, but because he's so lightly raced and now he's getting used to the blinkers, he can take a huge step forward. Like you mentioned it with Mott. Mott won the Derby with Country House at 60-something to 1. Mott won the Belmont with Drosselmeyer, who was double digits. He finished second in the Belmont with Vision and Verse at like 50 to 1. This is a guy, you said it. If he's in the race, he's there for a reason. He's not just there for he and his family to get a bunch of mint juleps. So I think those 2 horses have big shots. And you mentioned Dwayne Lucas. I like his horse in here as another horse that I think can hit the board. You look at his leg, he's kind of been an in and out type runner where he's alternated good races and bad races. And this, in theory, would be a bad race. But we mentioned Muth. Muth beat it by 2 lengths at Arkansas. Like that was a good race. Like he ran a very good race there. The Rebel, he was hung out wide, terrible race. Then if you go 3 back, it was the Mystic Dan slop race where Mystic Dan rode the bias to a win, and he was right there and ran well. And then the Smarty Jones, he caught the front. It may be just a little bit too early, and Catching Freedom ultimately passed him. So Just Steel is a horse I think that you need to use if you're looking for a price horse, at least to use underneath on your tickets as well. Maybe he ultimately won't get there, but I think Just Steel is someone who you're going to get a really good square price on. But Marco and I are on the same horse on top as our top pick, just a touch.
Interesting. I wrote Just Steel. Good closing speed, heavily used, obviously heavily raced. I mean, you look at all the races that he's been in. I guess
that's like what Marco said. D. Wayne's there for the party every time, whether it's there or not.
It's funny. I wrote Just a Touch too slow for Just a Touch, but you could be onto something from what you said. I was definitely planning on using Just a Touch. I said to use on this one. Resilience. Here's an interesting. Isn't Vasquez moving from him to Fierceness? Now I understand why. Fierceness is probably the overall best course, but are you concerned that the jockey's switching on Resilience?
No, he's on the Derby favorite. You're not gonna turn down Todd Pletcher for the Derby favorite to stick with the Wood Memorial win. And Junior Alvarado is someone that has first or second call for Bill Mott. You'll see a lot of Junior Alvarado, Bill Mott at Belmont and Saratoga when they run. So that's not. I wouldn't perceive that as a super negative jockey switch.
Okay, sounds like you two are on Just a Touch for sure. And like in Resilience, just don't tweet out what could go wrong, I suppose. Just Steel on the back. So here's what I wrote. I'm looking at a horse with a price of 20 to 1. And tell me where I'm wrong. I know his speed figures haven't been great, but Stronghold, he wins his last 2, obviously wins the Santa Anita Derby. And I know it's mostly Baffert in the past, but usually the Santa Anita Derby winner has had some very strong showings in the Kentucky Derby. I mean, looking at 20 to 1, I can't ignore that. It's a winner and at a good price. What am I missing on this one, Marco?
I didn't think the Santa Anita Derby was particularly tough this year. That was my first knock. I like this horse, a handy horse. And for D'Amato to have a dirt horse that's good, he's more known on the West Coast here as a turf guy. So for him to have a dirt horse that's doing well, this is, a real accomplishment for him. let me say nicely too, I think he's a guy that the feed's a little bit better in California than it is on the road too. That's another concern for me. But I think he's going to have to use too much of the horse to get the horse in position out of the 18 post. That's another concern for me. This horse likes to be in the mix early. I don't know that he's a horse that could pass a lot of horses if he's asked to.
Chris?
Yeah, I'm not sure he's fast enough to do it now. I was out on this horse entirely, and then I was listening to Jay Pribbin talk about the horse. Obviously, Jay's a West Coast guy, and he has a good feel out there of horses. And maybe it can be a little too positive on the West Coast horses at times, but he said the horse is an absolute use underneath, that he should be able to carry himself the distance, and he thinks that he's been prudently handled to get the horse to Sunland, to get the horse a win, get the horse some confidence. And then but I agree with the first thing Marco said. I think is the biggest reason as to ultimately why I can't really like this horse on top or even second. The Santa Anita Derby this year was one of the worst in recent history. Now, can this horse maybe stay on and grind himself away to a fourth place finish? Sure. The horse did finish in front of Resilience on this track in a maiden race. So clearly he has a good race under his belt here. And he's going to have to run. I mean, if you follow Beyer, if you're looking at Beyers in the past performances, his top Beyer is an 89. Like, he's going to have to run what? You figure the winning Beyer here is probably going to be somewhere in the 103 range, maybe 104 range, if not higher. He's going to have to improve like 15 Beyer points, and I just don't see that happening.
Okay. All right. No, that's fair enough. And before I ask you how you're going to construct your ticket, I also had, Catching Freedom is where I think one of you said that might have been more of a public horse coming in. He's 8-1. I wrote down when I rewatched his last race, it's the Louisiana Derby, they had a very nice outside close. I kind of thought, him coming around wide and still able to close out in the Louisiana Derby was somewhat impressive to me. Especially, you're sitting here with 1 mile and 3/16. You're looking at a decent, a very close to the Kentucky Derby type situation here for distance. So I kind of thought that was interesting. And you look at his numbers here, they keep going up and up. I like that. I know he was already beat by Sierra Leone at the Risen. What about this horse? Is he going to be part of your tickets up top, or just maybe used, or anything? Chris, you can go first.
I'll use him underneath. I think, again, same problem as Sierra Leone. The same problem is being you're talking about a horse with zero tactical speed at all. I mean, he is a closer from the clouds, and he got the trip at Fairgrounds on that long stretch. Can he get it here with 20 horses? I don't think so. I at probably 6-1, where he's probably going to go off, I won't be using him on my ticket in the win position. I also worry a little bit too about just not necessarily firing. Like, I don't know how fast he actually is. Like Sierra Leone, he's got to turn a foot when he fired. Like when in the Bluegrass, he was shot out of it. I mean, maybe that was the pace coming back to him. I think Catching Freedom is more of like a grinding type closer, and ultimately he's going to get there. I don't know if he does. I will say, if the biggest thing that Catching Freedom has going for him is Flavien Prat. Prat has done a masterful job in this race of getting horses, and sometimes closers like Country House, finding a trip, whether it's been outside or wherever, to have horses outrun their odds and give them the best chance to win. So Prat will do his best, but I ultimately think it's a little too short from the win spots. I'll have him underneath, but not in the win spot.
Okay. Well, Marco, how are you going to construct your ticket? I know we had a listener ask about best bets for Friday and Saturday, but I guess you can just talk about how Saturday you're going to construct your full ticket for the obviously everything at Churchill Downs, all the races, and what you're going to do with Kentucky Derby.
Well, like I already said with Derby, I'm going to spread deep on the bottom end of my trifectas and superfectas because a lot of horses can come in there, and Catching Freedom is a horse I'll have on there. And, full disclosure, I got a man crush on Flavian Pratt. Okay. I'm not leaving him off on a ticket. And if you've been on, any of the big races the last 3 years in the US, if you're leaving Brad Cox off your tickets, you're not doing well either. So having both of them in that combination, I'm going to have Catching Freedom somewhere there. As far as a horse that I like in another race, guys, turn to the 11th race, and number 11 on the race right before the Derby, Naval Power. I like a lot. This is a horse that had, a long layoff, was off, almost a year, coming back, third start off the layoff. I can tell you, for me, at least with my horses, the third start off the layoff, that's the one where you're going to get the best performance off of a horse. They're going to be the tightest. And what I like is he got his first start in Dubai. They shipped him over, raced him at Keeneland, got a second start in Keeneland. So you've already got all of the, quarantine situations out of the way and everything. You got a race here in the United States. You're acclimated again. And now this is the third start. And the buyer that he ran at Keeneland wins this race. And I expect him to be better. So I'm going to give you that horse. And I'm going to use that horse with several horses in the Derby on some daily doubles, because I think you're going to get some nice exotics there.
Okay, well, there you go. Naval Power from race 11 in the 11th position. So, here's his numbers, and looking good for Marco here for Naval Power. Chris, what about you? How are you going to construct your Kentucky Derby ticket? Any other plays for that day?
Yeah, I'm going to have Just a Touch as a key horse in my exactas and tries, and then I'll use the horses I had mentioned, Just Steel, Resilience, and a couple of others first and second in the exactas with him, and trifectas, because a lot of times the struggle I have in handicapping is maybe too often I try and figure out who's going to win the race, but just try and maybe figure out who's going to run their race. And I'm confident Just a Touch is going to run his race. So I have no issue keying Just a Touch second and third in tries or exactas, and using a bunch of other horses in other spots. That way, if I'm right about Just a Touch running his race, I'll win. And the story I like to go back to is with the Big Brown Belmont year. A buddy of mine who's a really good handicapper says, I don't know who's going to win today. I don't think it's going to be Big Brown. The one thing I'm certain about is that Dennis of Cork is going to run well today. And what wound up happening, Tatara wins the race at 25 to 1, 35 to 1, whatever he was. Big Brown's off the board. Dennis of Cork runs second, and you got the second and third longest shots on the board running third. So he had as a dead heat. So you got back almost $8,000 on a $2 try just for having an opinion that Dennis of Cork was going to run well, and I didn't have an idea who was going to win the race. So a lot of times it's not about picking the winner. It's about picking a horse that is going to be around and constructing a ticket around that. But I'll have my exact tickets and what I'm looking up later in the week. But to piggyback on Marco as well on some other races throughout the day, that Turf Classic race, I would think about including the horse on the rail integration. Second start off with 3-month layoff. I love the horse kind of grinded out a trip way wide in that last race, and going outside to inside, stretching out. He was a beaten favorite in that Pegasus down at Gulfstream too. So clearly Shug McGahee's horse is highly thought of. So I would consider using that horse with Marco's horse, the 11. Friday in the Ali Sheba, 8 to 5 seems like a gift on first mission. That might be one of those spots you can find him at a fixed odds shop, because I think that horse has a really good chance of being even money or less in the Ali Sheba on Friday. That's first mission. On Friday in the Modesty, I like surprisingly. The horse was probably best in the Orchid. Was beaten at 3 to 2. I think the horse had trouble in on the rail, couldn't quite get through. It gets Flavian Pratt, Marco Omai's boy, and I think the cutback will do him well. And then in the Edgewood on Friday, I think Calispera take a look at him. I had him in his first race at Gulfstream in the U.S. where he won, and then he lost his second race in the U.S. in the gate. They hadn't even stepped out of the gate, and he was a basket case. He was washed out. Just it was not comfortable at all. I think he's well placed here as well. So those are some other horses. And the Oaks, I can't come up with anybody in the Oaks, Marco. Like you could tell me Ways and Means. You could tell me Leslie's Rose. You could tell me Tarifa. You could tell me Just FYI. You could tell me Torpedo Ant. Like any of them, I think could win. I have a future on Ways and Means at 20-1. But I'm holding a good ticket. But I have a bad feeling with the strength of this race that might just turn into a nice little coaster on Saturday afternoon.
Yeah, I'm up in the air on the Oaks, and also trying to weigh which way we're going to handicap it. Is it going to be wet or is it going to be dry? That's the other problem with the race as well. So I have no opinion yet, but I will have something by Friday. That's for sure.
All right. Well, there you go. So lots of questions coming into the Oaks, and that makes sense. Our user seems to like the number 8 on Friday here, race 12. The number 8 horse, and Saturday, Lucas Horse Trademark says, don't get caught sleeping on that. So we'll look into that, man.
So on Friday, what race we talking?
We're talking Friday, number 8 in the race 12. So
race 12. So we're not even no, that's the 12th race on Friday is a one other than, and then so it can't be that.
Okay, Lucas
Trademark, Trademark, I think, is in the 7 furlong race. So on Saturday, I think.
Okay, I'll do a quick search for that.
I'll look at the Trademark. Let's see. No, I can trademark. Let's see. Trademark is in the 7th race on Friday.
Okay, 7th race on Friday.
Is that the Humana Distaff? It's the Ali Sheba.
Okay,
so he's against me on First Mission.
Okay, there
he
you
likes,
go.
He likes trademark the 10, Vicky Oliver. That horse won the Clark last year. So sure, that horse figures in the race for sure. Post isn't necessarily great, but I do like First Mission a little bit there. I will not be betting Tapit Trice, that's for sure.
Tapit Trice. I've heard that way too many times over the past 2 years. Makes sense, guys. Well, that's awesome. Thank you so much for this amazing information. Marco, where you say that we can get your wonderful ticket and plays for this weekend?
Well, guys, head over to WagerTalk.com. You'll be able to pick up my package on Saturday. The Kentucky Derby, I'll have my complete actual tickets. You know how they go, Kiev. I spell it out for you. You can just, print it out, walk to the window, and make your bets. And you'll also get all of my sports plays as well. And guys, we're having just a tremendous run right now. 2024 has been incredible for me all year long so far. This week we're 7-2 heading into Wednesday night action, and my NBA is on an 18-5 run. So knock on wood, we're going to keep it running, and you'll pick all that up on that package on Saturday.
That's awesome, Marco. Make sure you guys check out Wager Talk and catch Marco on his hot streak. Chris, where can we find our column on the Kentucky Derby?
Yeah, column will be up on foxsports.com. We're recording this on Wednesday, so that will probably be up at some point. Thursday would be my guess. I'm finishing up the exact way I'm going to bet the race before I pass it along, and I'll try and be as clear as possible if there's a weather or scratch or whatever else. But that'll be up at foxsports.com. The Bear Bets podcast is up already. We had Matt Bernier of FanDuel TV and NBC on to kind of kick the race around with us, and hopefully I'll be around to be able to tweet out some things as well. But I would check out that column, and I'll certainly tweet that out as well for everybody to find.
And Chris, you're not going to be at the Derby this year, are you?
No Derby for me this year. We're actually leaving on vacation or for vacation on Monday, so it was just too quick of a turnaround. Couldn't make the time work. And you know what? It's not a bad thing. As much as I love going to the Derby, to be able to sit here and just kind of be on my couch and be comfortable and get some last minute things together for the trip and punch my tickets at a leisurely pace and not have to worry about traffic and food lines and all that. You know, it's not the worst arrangement in the world to have the bottle of Blanton sitting a couple of steps away.
Sitting on your couch watching the Derby, what could go wrong? Well, that's great, guys. Thank you.
You said it, not me.
I meant with the relaxation part of it, not with the results. Well, hey, thanks again for coming on, guys. We'll be texting this weekend. Enjoy and best of luck on your tickets in the Derby.
Thanks.